All right, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll call the March 5th work session meeting of the Northport Village Council to order. Roll call, we've got trustees Cavendish, Cook, Ager, Dean, and President McCann, all present and accounted for. And I don't see our other two council members attending via Zoom at this time. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the agenda, amendments or additions. Are there any from the council? Laura?
I would love to add, if we could, PC membership numbers. Discussing, just like we did at council, how many members are on planning commission.
Okay. So yeah, add to discussion items, we'll put it as item E after subdivision ordinance repeal. So any other additions? With that, all in favor of the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is set. Item 3 is going to be public comment. Members of the public will have up to 5 minutes to address the village council. Looks like there's no members in person, so if anybody in Zoom would like to make a public comment, you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself at this time. Okay, doesn't look like we've got any takers. There will be a second public comment later in the meeting. That brings us to item 4, which are liaison reports. First up, we've got Waterfront Marina.
Nothing to report.
Thanks, Hugh. Infrastructure.
I don't have anything new, just the same projects that are being worked on and moving forward, and the tree is cut in front of Zero and moving forward, I assume. So I haven't heard otherwise.
Great. NLTUA, we had our bi-monthly board meeting the last week of February. Items of note were that we adopted our fiscal year 2026-2027 budget was approved. We approved our the NLTUA contract with the village for the superintendent, clerk, and deputy treasurer. And excuse me, the other item of note is that the system analysis, capacity growth study, and now on a timeline, it sounds like for April delivery. The initial was thought it was going to be February, but it sounds like they're doing a little more data collection. So when we have that, we'll present that at NLTUA and get that to council as well. Any questions regarding the NLTUA report? Okay. That brings us on to our discussion items. Item 5A, we've got 7th and High Street parcel concepts. We have the concepts are here with us from Influence Design Forum, and for both the High Street and the 7th Street, multiple concepts for each. And I know that Nate has joined us via Zoom today. Hey Nate, how's it going? Nathan, if you wanted to do a little presentation on what you came up with, or we can have the village manager do it, it's up to you.
Yeah, I can introduce it and present, and they can help me if I'm, need to fill anything in or with questions and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I thought I could just sort of walk through these.
Can we screen share?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't I'll put it on the screen. And I just got these, sent them out to council this morning, put them in the Dropbox, so they're in Dropbox for anybody out there in the public. Please go to the Dropbox, take a look at them. They're really fresh. And I told Nate we're going to present them at the meeting and just provide them to me ahead of the meeting. I didn't want to have a bunch of lag time where people were talking about it before we had a chance to talk about it. I'm excited to present these. These have been several months in the making. We've been talking about this since I've been here. And it's nice to see some actual concepts on paper. The The general idea for the discussion today is to walk through these concepts. And part of Nate's scope of work is that he's going to take whatever a preferred concept is from each of the sites, and he's going to render that in 3D. It's going to give us a much better view of what the concept would look like on the property. And then also that'll allow us to do a more detailed cost estimate to know exactly what the building is going to look like, where the layout is going to be of various things on the property. Then we can do a very detailed cost estimate and get an idea about how much this is going to cost, what would the final product look like, and what kind of market segment you would be targeting with the various kind of development, or none at all, right? If that were the case. And when we started working on this, we wanted to really present a range of different options. So there's everything from really doing nothing or passive recreation improvements to doing a full build out. When you're looking at these concepts, you got to keep that in mind. We want to look at the range of options, and that could include many units. I off the top of my head, I don't recall what's in the full development for 7th Street, but it's 16? I think 16 units. Yeah, 8 units, and then each with an ADU. So that would be 16 dwelling units, potentially on the like maximum density scenario for 7th Street. Okay, and there's variations in between. So we could start with either one. Why don't we start with 7th Street?
Sure.
We had to go through those. There's 3 documents in the Dropbox. One is a report, and the other 2 are called scenarios. The report has the scenario drawings, the concept drawings that are also in the scenario document, but the report adds some narrative to it to explain what each of the scenarios are and what's part of that of each of those concepts. That's in the report. You can also just look at the scenario documents, which have just the concept plans. They don't have that narrative component to it. But if you're wondering why there's 3, that's why. You could just refer to the report. So in the first one, titled Conservation Scenario, you see what it would look like with what I would call pretty minimal recreational improvements. With the parking lot. Yeah.
You want me to put it up on there?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm just on the wrong page.
Okay.
Sorry. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of
That's
going along with this. Thank you, Joni.
I would do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good, I
Okay.
think. So I'll kind of walk through them while we're screen sharing so that what I'm saying matches with what the Zoom attendees will see. So the first image here is just the parcel configuration as it is. Okay. The second, what I was just referring to is the conservation scenario. Notice the labeling at the bottom. And this would be a minimal amount of recreational improvements. Maybe that's not a fair characterization considering there is a parking area included there. Okay, but you can see how you can accommodate 7, 8 sites or parking spaces rather. And then you could vary these, but the idea was to have a path with some passive recreation improvements like a boardwalk and a interpretive signage, benches, a small picnic area.
What does the interpretive signage mean? Is that sort of trailhead?
A sign, describing wetland benefits or things of that nature, right? History of Northport, history of the site, be any number of things, I suppose.
Okay.
So that would be let's say the least intense use of the site outside of just doing nothing, which would just be like it is, right? Or you could just renaturalize some of the front areas, some have suggested. That would be the least intense, but this would be right there along with it as the least intense option for developing that front 1.2 acres. The second scenario we call current zoning framework. And you'll see that there's, thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
So this, if you took the R2 zoning that's currently on the site, you could split it into 5 lots. That could be configured like this. I think this is a good depiction of how you would split these under the current zoning regulations and have 5 buildable lots. Shows setbacks and generally the orientation. This would be the buildable area within the dashed lines on there. And that could be an option. It's similar. It reminds me of what was discussed with Mod Court. Except just on this front portion. And you'll see on the right under the scenario header on the right hand side, there's some details about the zoning. Okay, you kind of follow along as to how those are. Those change from scenario to scenario because it shows the unit size as well as we move through these. So in the third, we've got what we call design forward. So this would be a more innovative approach to designing the site. You'd have to use a planned unit development to implement this kind of design. The density is allowable within the current zoning, but then the planned unit development would be laid on top in order to allow for this varied kind of layout. This is what I envisioned when I initially did a concept for the site as a cottage court. There's 1, 2, 3, what is that? 4, 5, 6, 7 buildings with 9 units. So 2 of these, units 5 and 6, units 7 and 8 would be duplexes. But it would be within one building.
Duplexes side by side or up and down?
Up and
Up and
down,
down, probably, yeah.
what it says is up and down.
Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
okay.
Thanks for helping me with these. I don't have all of these memorized at this point. I'm going through them.
And the up and
Right.
downs are 800 square feet, the other ones would be 1,000. Like the single units.
Right, yeah. So the ones are like standalone.
Right, the ones that
Would be
stand
1,000.
alone have a garage and are 1,000 square feet, whereas
Yes.
the other 2 are up and down and 800 square feet, no garage.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of different ways that you can sort of reorient these, and within one block, within one rectangular building space, you could have different layouts,
Yeah,
right?
a question that maybe Nate knows, or maybe you do, is what's the different patterns? Like, is that gravel areas for parking, or what does that indicate?
Yes, it could be a variety of different surfaces, but the idea is those are access, right? That could be.
That's what I assumed.
That could
but I
be
just wanted to make sure.
yes, your assumption is right. That could be like a permeable pavement.
Yeah.
Or it could be pavement. Different options for how you would actually improve those and create access. But the key is that those are basically access and parking areas for the different units. And these units, the way that they're designed, they would, my goal would be to get them to nestle into some of the existing tree cover that's around the periphery of the 1.2 acres to the north. The trees kind of create a U shape on the property. And so with this design, hopefully you can fit those into some of that existing tree cover, preserving that and making it really, I think, an amenity for the site, shade and trees and so forth. But there would also be a common area, as you see closer to 7th Street. This depicts an access point on North Shore Drive and on 7th Street, which I think would be better for circulation, but I understand that there may be objections to something like that. Again, that's part of the discussion. Part of why we want to go through these concepts is to vet all of those issues. Okay, so and just a reminder, with those duplexes, this is showing how you could get more units there, but unit 5 and 6 could just as easily be unit 5. Instead of a duplex, you could do a single unit. So moving on to the next scenario, this is called cottage court, low density. This is a different design. Notice that this does not have an access point on North Shore Drive. The only road access point for motorized vehicles would be off of 7th Street. But there would be pedestrian access through the common area onto North Shore
Wait a minute,
Drive.
what are we looking at?
This is scenario 4.
Oh, this is the drive. Oh, I see, this is walking. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, wait a second, this shows specific garages.
Mhm.
And so we don't see specific garages on the previous one. So the garages,
They
Laura,
were
you-
lower level, so it would be similar to the buildings that are on West Street that Christie Fisher. and
okay, so you
Baker-
drive into your garage. I
And
got it.
that's stairs
All
up
right.
to the second level.
All right.
exactly.
And this one has freestanding garages. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Oh,
And
no,
then the
no,
rest
no.
don't have garages in that class, in scenario 4.
Mhm.
There's the 2 with the garages and the
Right,
rest.
right, yeah.
I think it's good to have a discussion as ideas come to mind, questions come up. I think this is a good format to just hash these out. So if you have questions along the way as I go through these, I'd like to hear them. And it's an important distinction to see, is it an attached garage? Is it detached?
Mhm.
Is it below the structure? Is it separated somewhat? I mean, those are important features, I think, especially when people are looking at properties that they want to buy. I think a garage is really important, actually. I think it's kind of one of the underrated things. And a lot of times in affordable housing, you're not gonna see garages.
So we're looking at this one now, I see only 2 freestanding garages, do the other units also have garages?
No, no garages.
Not on this one.
And these ones, all the units are smaller.
Yeah.
Because they're all 850 or less,
Mm.
or they're all 850.
Yes, in 1 story.
Yeah.
Important to note that, because you could make them 1,600. Just creating that second level. Or modifying the spacing just a little bit as well, could do that, if you could enlarge them slightly.
Yeah, another thing that I wonder too is that this one, obviously, the parking is further away for a bunch of them. And so I do wonder or how much it would be if we consider one of these to add just a covered area over the parking, because, it makes such a big difference if it's not being buried in snow every time.
Mhm.
And it doesn't fully protect it, but I can't imagine that if we're looking at it, I just feel like maybe not both sides, but the bigger side or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
I agree, I think that's a fairly low cost way to provide some
Well,
cover.
it makes it more appealing.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it would make it more appealing to me for sure if I was renting, because I've rented places that don't have garages and they're less appealing than ones that do have something to
Right.
work.
Exactly. Notice also that there's a storage building. These are small units. People need storage. So
Almost like
this is
to
a way
keep your bike and
Yeah,
other stuff that
exactly.
you may have.
Yeah, kayaks, all that
Yeah.
kind of thing. You're a block away from the lake here. And this is more of a traditional cottage court design. Traditional cottage court's kind of a newer concept for a new development, but this is more in line with the traditional concept where you have the court in the middle and the houses around the court. That's more of the traditional cottage court.
Well, and the common areas on this and other ones could be almost anything, right? I mean, like it could be just grass, it could be,
Exactly.
Lots of other plantings, or it could be a playground or whatever.
Or a pickleball court.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of different options. And I think it's important to note too, along those lines, and that you may recall from my concept plan, a brownfield redevelopment plan for this site, or for any site, one of the eligible activities would be to fund infrastructure. So you could take the tax increment that's created on the property and use that to fund infrastructure on the site. That would include recreational improvement. So they could capture the TIF funding in order to improve recreation elements on this site, as well as the 4.7 acre park area. So the development could pay for improvements on both of those, which would really help with the cost. If you're a developer and you're thinking, well, yes, I want to make a much better common area. I want to improve, or if the village could say, you are going to improve, as part of a development agreement, you could say, you are going to improve the 4.7 acre parkland with the following improvements. They could use brownfield funding to offset that cost. And I think that's important to know. It wouldn't necessarily be something that the developer out of pocket would be paying for.
It's safe to assume with all of these designs that the parkland can still be developed with a boardwalk around it, right? That's
Right.
still in.
Yes,
And we can use
exactly.
it, okay.
Whatever happens on this 1.2 acres, you've still got that 4.7 now that's designated. For whatever, keeping it in its current condition, making recreation improvements, whatever you saw fit. So moving on to
Ellie,
5.
Ellie, you got somebody walking in.
So this is cottage, scenario 5 is cottage court high density. And you can see the unit breakdown. You have 11 units plus 3 ADUs. So total 14 dwelling units, 3 of those being ADUs. Some slightly larger floor plans with 2-story, 1,200 square foot with detached ADU above a garage. If you'll notice on unit 1, unit 2, and unit 3, those first 3, that's their configuration. It's a 2-story, 1,200 square foot structure with a separate garage that has an ADU above. Those would be those first 3 coming in. The others would be duplexes towards North Shore. And of course, these could be massaged around on the site somewhat. So this would provide, obviously, several more units.
Yeah, I personally, there's a lot of things that I like about this one. So I just wanted to share that while we're on it. One of the things I really like is that there's a lot of different sizes. So there's very small, which would obviously be lower cost rent, or whatever situation that is. But I assume since it's an ADU, it's probably a rented unit. And then we have the bigger ones that are the 1, 2, and 3, and then the other ones are kind of the in between, medium size that a lot of the other ones have. Another thing I really like is that the storage lockers are closer to the ones that don't have their own garages, which I think is probably helpful. And then another question that I had is kind of along what Edwin was just saying, is that we probably also could extend parking up here, have covered area parking down here or not covered, but have parking here for the park area and then maybe still do the park area, but there's room for parking for that that's not taking the reserved parking.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I like how that all fits without seeming overly crowded to me, and that the parking is not readily visible from any of the roads.
It's kind of tucked in back. I like that as well.
Anyway, I like the fact that I feel like we could integrate multiple things maybe in this one and still have many units of varying sizes for the different groups of people that need housing in Northport.
My eyes can't read the size of the ADUs on this one.
400 square feet.
I'd also like to point out, it said this was in the report from about STR impact on market prices. Oh, no, actually, you know what? I'm sorry, I misspoke. There were 2 reports that I sent one to the council with the short-term rental analysis, but there was another one that just came through, and I'm not sure if it's a public record at this point, so I haven't been able to share it. I'll figure that out. I think you're going to see it soon. It's the market study that Peninsula Housing did for the Suttons Bay property, which I think is really helpful because our market conditions are going to be similar. It's not going to be exactly what that Herman Road site is in Suttons Bay, but it's going to be really close. And the biggest need right now that's been identified in that study is this price range, 300 to 350, which is what I've been hammering on. With the concept plan, because that's really just completely missing in a lot of the markets in this area, especially in Leelanau County. And that's what I think these units in this unit mix that's shown in these various scenarios is going to be able to accomplish that. So I think that's just important to keep in mind. It could be rental, it could be for sale. That's not determined. Certainly, I mean, we haven't gotten to that point, but if you're wondering why these sizes are what they are, that's why, because that is what we're really seeing a complete gap in the market for. So I'll move on to the 6. Yeah, this is the maximum density on 7th Street. With 16 units that include ADUs, where there's 8 units and 8 ADUs. One that goes along with each primary unit. The access is off of North Shore, not 7th Street. And you would end up with significantly less common area. In fact, there's no common area called out specifically. It would be common area by default just because there are portions that are developed. But there's no common area as in a more traditional cottage courts type layout. The ADUs are 400 square feet. The primary dwelling units are 1,200 with a combination of detached and attached garages. So you can see there's a lot of ways to slice this up and get different levels of density and intensity on the site. And that's why I think it's so important to go through this exercise to really do this kind of planning to see what fits and what makes most sense on these properties. So I guess we can turn to High Street. Be nice. And this is a reminder, the village has a lease agreement for what they call the children's center. I think it's called the Daisy.
Dandelion.
Dandelion, thank you. I was thinking of Dandelion Center now. So there's a lease for that. Village owns the property, but there's a lease. And it does not include these 2 platted lots to the north of that property, which have 100 feet of frontage currently on High Street.
How long is that lease till?
I don't know the last name. I'd have to check. A while though, because it was entered into not all that long ago, so I suspect that there's more time left on that. You think 2 more years?
I said it's been 2 years,
Or it's been 2
yeah.
years? So with 2 platted lots, if we do the same, if we take the same approach with this High Street property as with the 7th Street property, where first we look at what the existing zoning would allow. You have 2 platted lots, you can go and build by right today with a single family dwelling unit that also would have an ADU. So you could take 2 lots, with each with 50 feet, and put 2 primary units plus an ADU on each one, and that's what you see on this first scenario, which is under the existing zoning. This would be allowable by right. Notice they have a shared driveway.
No, this one you don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on scenario 2, aren't I? Excuse me.
It was on the back page.
Oh, both sides.
Coordinated, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, I'm just a little messed up. There it is, okay, yes, so single family, yeah, the first one does not have a shared driveway, thank you. This would be just a unit with a detached garage, 2 units, 2 single family primary dwelling units. Should be the lowest kind of intensity on the site. The second scenario, which is what I was just talking about, is where you increase the intensity slightly. You have a shared driveway in order to fit these on there. And there would be an ADU above a garage, so that you'd have 2 units, 2 dwelling units on each lot.
And these ADUs are 500 square feet, so,
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and 1,200 for the primary.
yeah. Can I say too, I really like the concept of a shared driveway, no matter which one, just one driveway instead of two, because it's way less vegetation that we'd have to take out.
Yeah, and there is some nice.
Well, and even if you have to take it out, you can put it back, but if it's a driveway, you can't, so,
Mhm.
you know, having two of them versus one is,
Yeah,
I think,
lots of benefits, fewer, less impervious surface area,
yeah.
and there is some nice vegetation on this site there too, there's some nice trees there.
No, this one doesn't have a garage?
Yeah, the garage is underneath the ADU.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this also is allowable within the current zone. To have a primary with an ADU. And then moving on to scenario 3,
Or,
I just did 2. 3 is slightly different, okay? 3 has duplexes.
no, I think you're on S41.
I think it means the third, but.
I am on the
third.
Yes.
I'm on scenario 3.
But it's.
Scenario
called
three.
S4.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a big.
Third one, number 4.
You can see the big numbers.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's some very small font when you.
Oh, yeah, that was the other.
Okay, these are duplex.
I just didn't want to use up all the tabloid, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think it's fine.
So are these up and down or side by side duplexes?
Up and down.
Yeah. And this shows 2-story duplex. With an attached garage. Okay, so this is also allowable under current zoning. Duplexes are an allowed use in R2. And so this is by right building right now
Okay,
under the current
so
zone.
these are shared garages.
I think it would be separate units within the thing, because like
Yes.
a lot of apartments that are condo style, you know, there's two garages side by side, and one of them has a stairwell right up to the second, and the other is a door. Yeah,
And maybe Nate can chime in, but I think there's different ways that we can, work within the footprint that's here. So that, you're not locked into like one design for the garage. This is just intended to show the area that a garage would take. But you gotta, yeah, there's some flexibility with the spacing of these. Okay, now we're moving on to scenario 4 with
I guess one more thing I want to point out,
Okay.
sorry, is
Yeah.
that they're 800 and 600 square feet, the two different sizes for those.
Yes, thank you.
So,
Yeah, good to point those out. I'll make note of that. The next one is called scenario 4, but it's the page at the bottom says S5.1. And that's the last scenario for the High Street property. Okay, now, this would be with a multi-family building on the site. This would be the maximum kind of density that you could do, where you have 6 units of various sizes ranging between 600, 800, 1200, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Okay, so this would be an apartment. And in order to do that, notice that the front lot width here is depicted as 123.5 feet.
Mhm.
So you need to take a little bit of land from the parcel to the south, and we do have enough. You'd have to adjust that boundary slightly.
and we'd have to do a PUD, right?
I don't think so, but it would need a rezone. This should fit under R3, I believe.
Yeah,
But with a
yes,
rezone,
yeah.
yeah. One of the options, and I'm not sure, maybe Nate and I can get together and talk about this offline if there was some kind of misunderstanding. But one of the things that is possible with these, and I'm flipping back to scenario 3, S4.1, when you have the duplexes and the detached garage, that would give you an opportunity to have an ADU above a garage. So you'd actually have 6 units, 2 duplexes plus 2 ADUs, which would be a total of 6 units. That's not something that's currently allowable in our zoning ordinance. The ADU is only allowed on a parcel that has a single family detached building, not a duplex. In my view, that's something that we could change easily, and I think it helps a lot with filling in what we call the missing middle, which is these kind of properties where you have a duplex that oftentimes it functions just like a single family structure does. And if you can do an ADU with a single family structure, why shouldn't you be able to do one with a duplex?
Absolutely.
So, but that does require changing the zoning ordinance to allow that. But that would be possible with this kind of layout, where instead of just a garage, you had a garage with an ADU and you're providing more units. And it also helps with the cost too. You know, you're gonna, the pro forma is gonna work better, much better when you have more units. So it's gonna be more attractive and you're gonna be able to, have, higher probability of actually achieving the affordability that's key. Anyway, so yeah, and then the highest density would be having an apartment, and this shows how we can put it on the site.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of putting the smaller units for the apartments, the rental apartments, all on High Street and keeping 7th Street more single family homes, duplexes and freestanding?
It's a good question. The way I look at it, I think is first, my first consideration is how would whatever's being proposed fit in with the character of the existing neighborhood. So for me, that's what really drove my initial concept, which is having a 5 to 7 unit cottage court, because I feel like that gives you enough units to make the numbers work for a developer, but it's still fairly small scale. That would, I think, fit in with the character of the neighborhood well. And that's a very subjective thing, but I think if you get beyond 5, 7, 8 units, it starts to become more intense to a point where I question, is that going to fit with the character of the neighborhood as well? There's a different feel on High Street because it's mostly undeveloped. It used to be the way up to the hospital. Now your neighbor is large lot, single family home on the corner. And then moving up the block, you have a vacant property, and then you have a childcare.
And the other side of the street is school. I mean,
Yeah.
I think to me, that's one of the advantages if we want to try and have an apartment somewhere that style. I feel like that is a place where it could fit in. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure it is subjective, so I'm sure there's people who disagree, but I feel like that's a place where it wouldn't seem out of place. It's the Highlands, the school, the Dandelion Center, and then yes, there is the one home, but I mean, you're kind of in this pocket of very large buildings for Northport.
Yeah.
So I think to me that I don't know that that's my favorite one, but I definitely think that it wouldn't necessarily be out of place. And again, I like that it gives us a lot of units and that there are still a variety of sizes, which I think is nice because I think we do need some bigger units because if we want people with children to be able to be here, you need to have enough space for that. We also do need some really smaller units that can be lower cost.
Yeah.
And this is all of them. I mean, and I think to me, that's my inclination on 7th also. I think that if we can make those fit and they don't look out of place, because I really do think, despite the fact that it is a lot of single family homes, there's also a lot of in that area detached garages and, you know, small little things tucked in just because of the older homes that have that, you know, and have their little cottages next to them.
So are you saying that you prefer some of the lower density designs on 7th?
On 7th, I think my favorite one is the one that,
Big letters, please, big numbers.
yes, hold on.
Is that S6 one that you liked?
Yes, that's the one that I like the best right now. I mean, with the because I feel like it would be easy to modify, right? And I do agree that having drives on both roads would lessen the amount coming out of each one. But I also think that it's nice to have it just on one so that it's not as, I think it does feel a little less overwhelming when it's not a pull through of this big parking. And I mean, I also, if we're going to do it and we're trying to do attainable housing, I do think like why go small and do just like the cup, like, for example, the first page that is by right,
Right,
like to me,
right, yeah,
that's not, I think we're trying to add to it and we have the space and that's why we like this lot. I don't want to do something that's smaller scale in terms of it's only 5 single family homes. But the other ones all have quite a lot, so I mean, I'm sure people have other opinions as well.
I've been concerned since the beginning about whether about when the actual builders come in with opinions on whether they could do this and for how much. I mean, it seems like they might have been involved, should have been involved since the beginning. But I guess they're not.
We have had builders involved.
Oh, I know, but not at looking at designs to say, well, you know, these units, we'd have to spend this much and they'd have to cost this much.
But I think we need to give them a design before they give us an estimate, because
I
we
think
don't know what we
part of
want.
this is
That-
figuring that out,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Like, we
Yeah.
really need to do this in order to have that conversation and know exactly how to break out the costs.
Well, as well as like the
Well,
zoning
I-
review
I-
that they're doing, they need too,
I
so.
hear that, but I also think that, you know, what if a builder comes in and says, you know, if I'm building five buildings on that land, then it's gonna be really expensive. But if I'm building an apartment building on that land, it'll be a lot cheaper.
Sure.
So that's what I worry about, but I guess there's no way around it.
No, there's not, but having all of these, we could go to a builder and say, here's the concepts we have. This is our A, B, C, and D, which ones work for you, and sort of kind of come to some compromise where, you know, 5 units isn't enough. You know, do we really want to see 16? Does the, you know, like Laura said, S61, does that kind of like the middle ground there where there's, you know, there's enough building to offset some of their costs for the resale. You know, you know, I mean, I think, you know, I think I like a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think, but, you
Yeah,
know,
I'm not saying that I don't like
No.
the other ones, I just think, like, if we're supposed to narrow the focus, I
Yeah.
just wanna
Yeah,
say what
but I
my
think-
favorite is.
We want the responsibility to dictate what we want and have them buy into it versus just giving them carte blanche.
somebody telling us what they're gonna put in.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
I was
Ellen.
gonna say, like, so understand with like working with a private developer instead of a nonprofit, we're able to customize, and that was kind of the whole idea of doing this. A concern of mine though is that with a private developer, we don't have the same contracts and stipulations as we would with a nonprofit. And I know we're gonna have our lawyer have something in writing, but what exactly is our objective and a target price that we're shooting for? Like, I know attainable housing, affordable housing, maybe it's a certain price.
Those are great questions, and the same development agreement, more or less, is gonna be used, you would use regardless of the builder, whether it was a nonprofit housing corporation or a for-profit developer,
Mhm.
you can have the same kind of development agreement in place.
Right.
So I think that's important to keep in mind, including performance guarantees. Okay.
Much needed.
Which I think is really critical.
Absolutely.
But then to the point about the price range, that's really important because the numbers that Mishta is publishing now suggest that the area median income is over 90,000 right now for one person household. As I've been saying, I would expect that the real number today is actually probably 100,000. And it's higher for when there's more people in the household. So, you know, if you're targeting the 80 to 120% of the area median income as attainable housing, you're talking about household incomes that are in the range of $80,000 to $120,000, just using rough figures. The biggest need is 60% and below right now. Those are vastly different And it's very, very difficult to get projects that where you can get the pro forma to work, and the developers, a for-profit developer for sure, not interested. But even for the nonprofit housing corporations, they really have to get a lot of subsidy and a lot of financial support in order to get anything close to those 60 and below AMI. That's what you're hearing from the nonprofit housing folks. And so setting that goal is going to affect how you can do these sites tremendously. That's why I suggested targeting an 80 to 120%, because I think that really meets an important market gap. But that's not targeting more of the workforce needs for housing, which are often in the 60% or
Right.
below AMI.
That's why,
The
like,
apartment.
the one with the ADUs with the 400, it gives you that variability of somebody could buy and then offer a 400 square foot rental to somebody
Mhm.
at a rate that could fit that 60%. You know, it's not necessarily giving that person in the 60% ownership,
Mhm.
but, you know, the market just doesn't allow that. And there are some people that I think would just be happy to rent. You know,
Yeah.
renting is a very good option.
Yes,
You know, I mean, I know you don't build equity and all this kind of stuff, but it's like you also don't take on the responsibility of homeownership and when the boiler goes out and all that other stuff. So I think if there's a way for us to accomplish allowing people to buy and also rent to other people in our community, I
but
think
would they be,
if there's an ability to do that,
I
I think that's a great way to look at it.
And by the way, you can reduce your tax rate by half if you get an attainable housing facility exemption or a rental.
And have somebody help offset your mortgage. I mean, when you go to buy a mortgage or, you know, apply for a mortgage, if there's rentability, that's oftentimes income that can be, you know.
Yeah.
Count
Count it as part of
towards,
your
yeah,
income.
you were in the mortgage business, weren't you?
I know what they're.
Yeah, okay.
would, just a question, would people, like on Seventh Street, these, units that have ADUs, would people who buy those units be required to rent out those ADUs?
There's many different ways you can structure that.
And I know you can structure it so it's financially attractive, but
We could require it so that they couldn't be used as short-term rentals.
Right,
So
we
what-
can, and that's the plan, like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
right,
no matter
yeah,
what it is, it's
right.
not an STR.
right.
See how we can force somebody to rent out either.
You can, but, you know,
Are we allowed to have income requirements? Like you have to be, I don't know, below a certain rate?
Well, that's what attainable housing is all about. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it would be restricted.
Edwin asked about, he mentioned for-profit developers, but we're not thinking any for-profit developers are gonna be interested in these, are we?
That is how I came up with the concept initially, is to make it so that it was attractive, so that it wouldn't be a huge profit margin. But the way that I did the pro forma coming into this was to structure it so that there was profit that you could make from this kind of development, so that private builders were interested. You don't have to use that approach. You could tailor this for nonprofit housing corporations. You could limit who was going to respond to the RFP, for example, like with what the township is doing on the recycling site. You could limit that to only nonprofit housing corporations, but you don't have to. And I think it'd be better if you could open it up to a broader range of builders. And so if you're able to get it to a point where there is the potential for profit, they may be interested.
So after they develop the property, after we've donated the land and they've developed the property and it's sold, it's the developer who's making back their money. At that point, like, are we, I don't know, at any point in time, like not able to do anything that a nonprofit would, or is that we can structure the contract in a way that it would be effectively the same?
The same as what?
Like, let's just say they build it up and they're like, you know what, we didn't realize this is way more expensive than we realized. I think this is actually an issue in Sutton's Bay. It's in their contract where if this is way too expensive, we now don't sell it at this price. Like, what exactly is going to happen after that? Maybe it returns back to us, things like that. I'm just thinking, like, if the pro forma goes over budget, where do we land after that?
Details in the contract, in your development agreement,
Okay.
with whoever you partner with. I think those are details that you really have to work out with them, and I'm sure that's exactly what Peninsula Housing and Suttons Bay are working through too, where there could be clauses in the agreement that speak, that stipulate how they're going to handle a situation where they're not gonna make enough to pay back whatever, I don't know exactly how that's structured for them. It's an important consideration. There's a risk with any development, of course, and so the development agreement is going to address who bears that risk.
So, let's say, and I'm not sure we're there, but let's say we decide on one scenario for High Street, one scenario for 7th Street, then what?
Well, the next step is Nate is going to do 3D renderings for these so that we can see visually what these would actually look like in person. And it gives us a sense
Might
for,
look like, I mean, this is just he's gonna pick one idea,
yeah,
a concept out of his head. But then a developer might look and say, whoa, we put that portico up there, or we do this, we gotta,
yeah.
yeah,
But that's why you rely on someone like Nate, because
Right.
he's done these specifics and we're doing
for,
this.
for affordable housing
Yeah.
developments?
Yes.
Okay,
So that's why we're
right.
looking at it with that in mind.
Right,
All the time
okay.
is what can a developer actually do with this? What's gonna work for them?
Yeah,
But the next step in the process is to have the rendering. That's to present to the public, that's to present to developers.
mhm,
It's to help refine a cost estimate and do a pro forma.
mhm.
But that doesn't mean that you're locked in and you have to
Mhm,
do that
mhm.
concept. There could be variations that come along as they do the project. Because of cost issues,
Mhm.
we have to modify this aspect of it, for example.
Yeah,
That's definitely something that could happen along the way.
yeah, normally you have an owner who's working on the project, and in this case, we have a village and a village council and a planning commission and all that, and we all have to be involved in all the steps, I guess,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Sorry for.
No, you're good. Don't be
Confused
sorry.
questions.
There's
That's good. That's
lots,
what we're here
there's
for.
lots of aspects to this project, and we're working through them, and that's one thing that I think we have. We're right now we're doing some visual representation. A lot of great discussion about down the line with the developers and stuff, but those are things that we can continue to tackle and look at and try to when those moments arise, I'm sure our manager will have more information for us. Lori, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I have a few questions. First of all, what is it that we paid for to have rendered? Do we have to pick just one from each category?
He's doing 2 renderings, yes.
So one from each category has to be the final decision, okay. Then another thing I just want to say is, I like this one best, but if everybody agrees on a different one, I would really like to see trails worked into any of them that have housing. And I feel this one and the other one with the parking in the back lends itself easily, but if it's a different one, I think they'd have to figure that out because you would need to have parking. The one that's S61, and then also I know the parking would work for a trail at the back.
That's fine, I
And
think.
yeah, S51.
Yeah,
And to me, the other ones probably could be figured out also. It's just you have to change things because nobody wants people parking on North Shore for the trails or in their driveways. Anyway, so that's one thing on there. And then again, I super agree with Chris that I really like that there's 400 square foot ones in this plan, just because I do think the smaller it is, even with high costs, that obviously means that you can get the price down more. And I do wonder with this one, I don't know where people stand, and I don't even honestly know which one I like best, but with the apartment, another question I have is that right now there's 2 single bedrooms that are 600, which is 1,200, and that could be 300-400, but I don't know if they can make it work with the layout. But it's just, to me, like, if we're doing the apartment, maybe can we fit more really small ones, so that we are maximizing as much as we can? Especially because if we're going to do more on 7th Street that are a little bit bigger, I feel like if we're doing an apartment building, that maybe we do have smaller ones in there, and maybe, anyway, I'm just saying, like, that might be a way to maximize and get more right there that are the smaller ones, and then it's less of a concern on 7th Street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think there's room to reshape the multifamily building, the apartment building on High Street. There's sufficient room in there. And the max height is 35 feet. So I think you can get this to fit more units of different sizes. Nate, do you agree? Do you feel like I'm misstating anything there?
No, you've done a great job, Jared.
Thank you.
But I do want to point out that obviously, if the ultimate goal is to issue an RFP to developers or contractors, that I think not having to just pick one for each property, you guys could pick a few that you were preferred and study them more, and develop pro formas for those, put them in front of a contractor, initially that would be willing to work with you, versus having to just go to one preferred. Because I mean, as you can see on the 7th Street parcel, the majority of the scenarios that we put together show one parcel. We don't show individual lot lines even, because I didn't want to get into the weeds, the detail of how that could be broken down. But that's something, again, too, that as part of your development agreement, that would be in your RFP, you'd probably want to consider, speaking with a land use attorney or an attorney with land use experience on how that parcel might be developed into individual lots, or does it remain one parcel and it becomes a site condo? Because there's a lot of different things that have to go into that and thought ahead of time, because ultimately in the end, for how mortgages work and funding for how people can then attain those places and how it's actually ultimately developed, those two things are related. So that's important to note as well.
Good point.
Isn't a site condo situation the easiest?
I can't comment on that. That's above my pay grade. Ultimately, I think talking with a good land use attorney or someone who has experience with attainable housing and looking at all of the funding scenarios and lending and how that would be broken apart. Because, for example, as you guys were discussing this, for when you have an ADU tied to a single family home, for someone to come in and purchase a single family home with a garage and an ADU, that might make it not attainable, unaffordable out of the gate. So it may have to be looked at in a way where, if it is, say it is a site condo, then maybe the lower part of the garage becomes a common element, and the ADU on top is sold separately. But the garage is just shared common element between the single family home and the ADU. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat on this. So that, I guess, back to the idea that I think picking a few of your preferred options for 7th Street, and not just one, and maybe looking and studying those a little bit more. And you could even do that before we do a pretty picture at the end. I mean, the pretty picture at the end and building out a rendering, really, that's not for getting pricing. That's more just to help build some support in the community, for one, but it's also there to be able to show a developer kind of your vision for the property. It's not the design you're going to ultimately most likely build, because things are going to obviously change at some point when you go from crayon drawings and development scenarios to actual construction drawings and building these.
Has anybody heard or read anything about the war in Iran and whether that's going to affect building materials? I mean, I just.
Yeah, no clue.
No
I
clue.
mean, you can expect building material prices to increase.
They keep.
Oh,
going
no,
down.
they're down like everything else.
Hey, I mean, just, my best
Yeah, they're not
assessment
going
would
down.
be that over time, it will be more expensive.
They make some really good points about the legal
Yeah.
structure and all of this, because we don't know that right now, but it will have an impact on how is it for sale? Is it for rent? If it's for sale, is it a condo, or are they separate lots?
Mhm.
it makes a difference. A mortgage has a higher rate when it's a condo. Or if it's an attached structure as opposed to a single family structure. You know, there's a lot of details there, but we really don't have to sort through all of that right now. And I think Nate's exactly on the right track. You know, the idea is to find a preferred alternative or a couple preferred alternatives and start moving forward in the process, which includes discussions with builders and attorneys to see exactly what the best way to structure this would be and how you achieve your goal of attainable housing and for who that is.
Right, it's like the quote, you know, plan is useless, but planning is essential. I think we don't really know how it's gonna all play out. But I wanted to add to Laura's point. I do really like the idea, and I've talked to Jared about this of trails, but specifically a boardwalk. I'd really like this to be ADA accessible. Because we had, I don't know if you said it was a brownfield redevelopment, there's extra funds that we can use to develop the parkland.
Yeah.
Having that be a full boardwalk, I don't know exactly how long it would be, but surrounding it with plaques, I think that'd be really beautiful because there's really no other place in the village of Northport that someone in a wheelchair or a scooter or even a cane can really get outside and get into nature.
Our master plan super supports that. Like our master plan is supposed to be constantly working to have more handicap accessibility and universal access. One other thing I wanted to say that isn't, I mean, and with the trails, when I was looking at those, I mean, they'll definitely, I know this is just a rough drawing. So like, but there is like that like creek that's not really a creek, but it is now, that they would have to be sure that that part is got boardwalk over. And right now I don't know that it does in the drawings, but like, it's not a big deal because they can, I'm sure, just add that, but they'll need to do that. And if it was the whole path, it obviously would get it anyway. And one other thing I want to say that I know is one of these future things and things with builders, but this is something that has concerned me about 7th Street for a long time. So I just want to be sure, I know that it doesn't necessarily stop you, but in one of the studies that we had done, one of the things when they drilled in this location, the one that's kind of near to the lift station, it was that groundwater was encountered at approximately 3 feet below grade during the drilling. It should be noted that it can change, obviously. And it is anticipated that a dewatering system may be necessary for the proposed construction on site. Perimeter drains, if used, should be placed on lower foundational areas for groundwater collecting, and the drains should be connected to a positive gravity outlet at multiple locations to remove water from the building area. I realize it could be different. They say that also. I just want to be sure because if they have to do some of this gravity outlet and all of these other things, like I feel like that's going to affect what other infrastructure is going in. And I just want to be sure that people keep that in mind when they're looking at it, because I don't want it to be something that then is like, oh my gosh, because of this, we have to redo how we did the common, you know, I don't know. I just don't want it to be overlooked until it's too late. And the water honestly is probably lower because when they did this study, the water was high and it is definitely not now. But I still just want to be sure that people don't forget that we were told that, because I don't want to have this in our records and then find it out later and then have it be a problem.
Yeah, I can attest to that because my sump pump hasn't run in years. But it
But it
also,
used to.
there was a point where it ran every 45 seconds. too.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I just wanted to say that again too for when we're looking at it or whatever, because I feel like I know that on 4th Street, when they were looking at those types of positive, they like take up a bunch more space.
Well, there definitely would need to be some, a variety of different things, you know, geotechnical kind of work, soil testing, and a new environmental assessment, because the one that we have is over 5
Way
years
too
old.
Yeah,
Mhm.
way too old.
So those are all stuff.
Any other discussion on these? Do we want to, you know, I mean, this is not an action item, but maybe for the next council meeting, we, you know, kind of pick our favorite 2 from each site and we can further discuss those at the time. And
Well, I wonder if we should pick our favorite 2, but then which one we would prefer to see renderings.
that's what.
It's like,
yeah.
yeah. Because like if we still have to narrow it down to just 2 for renderings,
Like, what's your number 1? What's your number 2?
Yeah.
Whichever one kind of gets the most
it
ones.
is the number 1.
Is
Yeah.
the one we'll go with as a consensus.
As the renderings, but we'll show both. Because also these we're gonna have at the housing summit. I don't know if we'll have the renderings done, but we'll have these, I'm sure.
I think the renderings will be done by then.
Sweet. Okay.
Especially at the pace we're moving, if we schedule this for the, what's the 19th? Is the regular meeting?
Yeah.
March 19th?
Give them
This
weeks or.
Well, that just is for us to come back
Right.
So for you to take time,
Right.
talk, people talk and then come back with an action. These are our preferences, and then they can finish up.
We're not making any decisions today.
No, I
Right,
think
but
it's just a
we're to
good,
make
good,
decisions.
good, first look, kind of site reading what's here. On the fly discussion, and then you can develop more thoughts over the next, 2 weeks and come back with, any points people have on various designs or, yeah, no, I think this is, thank you, Jared, for kind of
Yes,
guiding us through that, and
Thank you.
Nate, thanks for the work you've done. This is a big step in the right direction for us here as a community, so I appreciate the work you put into this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
And they-
Okay. That brings us to item 5B, which is gonna be the water rate study proposal. And the proposal was in the packet, and in Jared's, memorandum, what do we call it, memo to the council. Out of our budget committee, which Edwin and I, serve on, thank you, but he wasn't there. There was discussion regarding the fact that the water fund is subsidized by the general fund. And that, should we look at the water fund supporting itself so that money that we're allocating from the general fund can be used towards other things. Basically, the water fund would pay for itself rather than be subsidized by, potentially taxpayers that are not using municipal water.
And is that generally the case in other municipalities that the water fund supports itself?
Yes, I would say so, but that's certainly not 100% of the time. Let's say 60% or
In healthy
75%.
communities,
It's the goal.
it's the goal. Okay.
Yeah, they're considered enterprise funds for a reason. The idea is that it's an enterprise that supports itself with its own revenue.
Okay.
And as we're working through the capital improvement plan with the planning commission, there are literally millions of dollars worth of projects associated with the water system.
There's
Did you
six.
say a billion with a B?
Yeah.
With an M.
Oh, I thought we only talked in terms of billions these
Yeah.
days. No. Okay,
Millions.
millions.
But where is millions going to come from with our budget that's 200, 300,000, that order of magnitude? It's unrealistic, I think, to think that the current budget structure for the water fund is going to be able to adequately cover those. And I think funders, for example, the drinking water revolving fund, which is a great funding source from the state for water projects, they want to see that you have adequate revenue to pay for, you have adequate rates to pay for whatever kind of improvements you're making. So the loans can be available, but you have to be able to show that you can pay it back too. Dawn Lund from UFS, the company with the proposal, she's on the call. And I know she's done this work all over the country, and she's very well regarded in the state. Seen her work in many other places. So I'm glad that she's in the area. I'm glad she submitted her proposal. It's 14,900, I believe. And that she can do the work to show you what kind of rate structure you would need in order to accomplish the projects that you want to accomplish. If you want to, say, we're going to space them out over 20 years instead of 10 or 5 or whatever the case may be, that's going to allow you to have lower rates, but you're not going to be able to do as much. But that's what she can do, is help study that and give you the information so that you're making a well-informed decision about what those rates are, and you can justify it and support that when people get upset, because inevitably people will get upset about their water rates and sewer rates. We do have, I think, quite low water rates.
We do.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
the studies have shown, even before we upped the rates, they were insanely low. Then they were still lower than most other communities in the area.
I do want to add to that. We do have like one of the lowest water rates, and the reason why it is so low is because we wanted to kind of keep costs down with the sewer. And now that the bonds are going to be up soon, hopefully increasing the water rates will sort of be in counterbalance with the lower charges on the sewer, so.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
don't
we're
know
trying
if
to
there
do.
gonna be lower charges on the sewer though at all, but,
But yeah,
I,
depending, sorry, do we get that study back? The,
it's not, it's coming in April
Okay.
now, is the
That's a
adjustment.
capacity study.
Yeah, that's capacity.
for like
So-
repairs and things, because that was kind of why the rates would stay high. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, no, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I just,
Oh,
yeah, I think that, to me, I don't have a huge problem with it coming from the general fund. Somebody said that, you know, tax dollars, if you don't use the water system. I feel like if you live in Northport, you are benefiting from the water system, whether you're hooked up to it or not, because the business district and everything else has to have that water system. But I also, at the same time, like, I'm very aware of how many water projects there are, and there's like 6 water mains right now that, if we had the money, should be replaced. So to me, it makes total sense, both for grants and the fact that we have an enormous amount of projects. And the reason that we are in this position is because they have stayed low for so long. And so to me, there's no advantage to continuing to pretend like it's working, because it's not. Like, as you said, needs to support itself, and it's not going to suddenly magically do that. It's just not.
I think there's also a lot of benefit that would come from freeing up that transfer that happens from the general fund to the waterfront. If you have an extra $110,000 annually in your general fund budget,
Right.
that you can start to put to some other use.
Right. Well, and even if it is water repairs, like, I mean, it's still like potential that we could need it for water uses, but it would be that it's additional instead of it's critical, because it's the only way it can even function. So I definitely support doing it. Just, do you remember when we did this last time? What did it cost us last time? When we did the study?
Well, Dawn could probably tell us. I think it was 19.
Yes, hi. Yeah, thank you so much. So great question and great discussion. I agree with what everybody's said so far. So, yeah, last time, it was closer to that $19,000 range, but I want to, explain, level of service. So in 2024, you guys did what's called a cost of service study, where we look at revenues, we look at expenses, we take that revenue requirement number, which is simply the money you need to get from your customers, and we allocate it according to certain cost drivers by meter size. So a cost to service study tells you what's the perfect quote unquote rate structure we should be charging our customers. What should we be charging the monthly customer charge? What should we be charging the usage charge? Combined with that study, we also did a financial projection, where the financial projection looks at where you are financially today and where you're moving into the future. And I look at key financial targets and say, all right, in order to stay on track and do the capital improvement program that you have and keep your cash healthy, we need, and I'm just making up numbers, 5% rate adjustments over the next 5 years. And the third part of that is the rate design. How do I take all of that information and design the rate, so we make it as fair and equitable to our customers, whether they're using a small amount of water or a large amount of water. So you did the whole complete study last time. This time, so we do you should do a cost of service study every 3 to 5 years, or when there's a major change in operations. Now, once you have that base study, you can then move forward just updating the financial projection piece, which that's the piece where I look at revenues, expenses, and I say, okay, here's your key targets. This is your capital improvement program. These are the rate adjustments you should have. And then I use the results of the study in 2024 to help me design the rate. So, in the financial projection at 14.9 is obviously less money because there's less level of service. However, since then, our rates have gone up about 10%, and they're probably going to go up about another 5 soon. And I gave you the equivalent of what we charged in 2024 to update financial projection, just to give you some leeway there, if you will, because you're could potentially be ongoing customer.
Well, thank you.
Great questions.
Susan?
My question is, can we make any smart decisions about water rates without enlisting this study?
We'd just be guessing.
That's what I thought.
It's the same situation we found ourselves in at the NLTUA, is that, you know, steady rates rather than increasing lead to obviously higher charges. But without a professional's opinion, we're just guessing. I mean, you know, and to have a third party, an independent person who can just say,
I agree.
you know, here's the numbers, here's what it's gonna take. You know, I know she's been uncaged, so she likes Northport. But,
Yeah.
you know, so, but, you know, rather than having an opinion one way or the other, it's more based on fact and, you know, here's the black and white scenario for you, rather than trying to sugarcoat the numbers so that, you know, we're feeling good about what we're paying for water, when, as you said, there's lots to fix. That money that's being allocated could go to other infrastructure projects like sidewalks or things we have in town. And I only brought up the point about, you know, non-water users and I, you know, just, you know, everyone's got something to complain about. once in a while.
Yeah, no, and I'm not disagreeing. I've heard that. I just am saying I don't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't either, and
Yeah.
Laura and I each have wells.
Yeah, like I have a well, yeah, so.
So, yeah,
So I think we should go ahead with this.
Okay. We can schedule for action.
Yeah, so for action next meeting, yeah.
Okay.
any other questions for Dawn regarding the proposal? Any other comments you want to make on the proposal? I mean, we appreciate you putting it together for us and getting back to Jared in a timely manner so we can,
Get moving.
yeah, exactly.
No, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity to bid on this project, and I hope to work with you soon.
I guess I have one question for her.
Sure.
You said that really you should probably do it every 3 to 5 years. So is that the full study that you would do? And what determines like if it's 3 or 5?
Okay, great question. So 3 to 5 years for the full cost of service study that you did. Many utilities do yearly financial projections, which this is what you're doing, would be doing this time, which is your second year. So you know, waited 2 years. The big driver in that is the capital improvement program. The last time you had about, I've been hearing the throwing out millions here today in the discussions. The last time you had, if I recall, it was between 750 and 900,000. So it sounds like your capital needs have gone up. And last time your rate increases were robust. And especially if you're thinking of changing any type of revenue support to the system, you've got 3 major things going on there. Is the rate track that we predicted before on track? The capital sounds like it changed, and you want to look at the effects of possibly changing a revenue stream to the water department. Those things all combined would indicate you probably should have an updated financial projection. What triggers the more detailed long-term study is if you have a major change in operations. Let's say you change the way, you add some sort of extra treatment component, or you change the way you do things, or you add significant staff. That can change the allocation or the drivers to the rate structure. So great questions. The financial projection in theory would be updated every year. The more robust study, detailed study, would be done every 3 to 5 years, or if you have that major change in operations.
Thank you.
Any other
Good
questions?
questions.
No? Okay. Thanks for joining us today, Dawn, and walking us through that stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good day.
We'll have this on the agenda next month for action.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 5C, which is going to be short-term rental ordinance discussion. The short-term rental ordinance was placed in the packet, the draft with, I like the way Jared's been doing this with bold underline, updated text and taking out the old stuff, or, you know, strike throughs. And you want to just, it sounds like this is to bring this in conformance with our zoning, so that there's definitions match, language matches. This doesn't really, yeah, exactly, it doesn't have much to do with
No,
cap numbers or overlays at this point. This is just more of a
yeah,
housekeeping compliance issue that we're looking at is a way.
yeah, definitely. Fair explanation. They're minor changes, does not really impact the way the village regulates STRs in any substantive
But
way.
it allows us to easily assess a fee, decide to assess a fee.
Yeah, it would, that's, that in section 3, it adds a fee. There's 0 right now.
Yeah, that was one thing when we talked, is that there's gotta be something so that the amount of time staff is spending on STRs can be offset, and I
Yeah.
think that the fee included is not.
Says it'll be on the fee schedule,
Yeah.
so then we can adjust the fee schedule and you can do that without having to change the ordinance.
Exactly, yeah.
Mhm.
And that's gonna be coming soon, because we've got several fees that we need to look at again. It's just within the next couple months. to Do that.
What sounds like a good fee?
What
Yeah.
sounds like it?
Yeah,
Oh, the number I've been throwing around is $200,
Mhm.
because we've got 45 to 50 operating STRs. At $200 a piece, that'd be $9,000 to $10,000, and I think that matches up very closely with the actual staff time that's been involved in administering the program. I've been doing most of it. Joni and Ellie are involved to some extent, but I think we are easily spending 9,000 to 10,000 plus in staff time administering it. So I think that's a very reasonable fee as I see it today.
and what do other villages charge?
I don't know, I'd have to do a survey. I don't know offhand.
I do know that the fee has to be like justifiable for the time that is being spent though. So even if somebody else is like, we charge 2,000, like that's
Yeah.
great, but they could get sued and probably lose because unless they're doing some crazy amount of work, they can't show that they've spent $2,000 on every application,
Yeah.
so.
It's really just, you're right, specific to that organization. They could have 200 STRs, they could have 5, you just don't know. And you just don't know who's working on it for them either, so.
So, but we could charge 300 instead of 200 and,
Well, and we don't have to decide that today at all.
Right,
because
but I'm
that'll be
just-
when we
I'm
get
just
to the
asking
fee
since
schedule
we're-
discussion.
So once this is established, and there's a violation, you'd be the violation officer
I am, yes.
or the
Mhm.
enforcement officer.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a violation section.
yeah, I saw that.
I have it.
But yes, the,
Yeah,
it's, I'm responsible for all code enforcement.
and I think it's $200. If somebody operates a STR without having registered, it's $200 right off, and then they're given a certain amount of time to get in their papers, and if they don't, then it's $200 a day.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Laura,
Yeah, I have a few things. So one of my questions is on the first page where we're changing the definition, which I know to try and make it match. But one thing that I just want to point out is, so if you're renting with Airbnb and you're just renting a room, this wouldn't apply to you, right?
That's
Like,
right.
and then if you have friends come every week, but they don't pay you, it would still be fine also.
Yes,
Right.
those would not fall under the definition.
Yep, that's what I thought. I just want to be sure. And then the final thing was on this page 2. And my question on that is in terms of the violation. And my question is if they let it lapse. So obviously if you let it lapse and it's like, oh man, it was 6 months and I forgot or whatever, and you remind them, or because they get a letter or whatever, they send it in, they're fine. But what if they let it lapse further than that? Because what I want to know, and should it be in here, is what happens if they've done it for, to me, over a year. If you've let it, because you're supposed to do it every year. So if you've let it go a whole year and you didn't renew, do they then no longer can they just fill out this form, but they have to do the zoning process where they are filling out and doing the special use permit? Because to me, I feel like there should be a point at which they do. Like, but I don't know what the legalities are, because if it's been that use in the past, how long has it not been that use? But it was that use the whole time, they just didn't comply. I don't know, but I wanted to ask, because tying that in and being like, you would have to do this process if you didn't just send your money in, right? Send your paperwork in. And I don't know if there is a way, but I wanted to know. Because I feel like if there was, we should include that and be like, if it's over a year lapse. But I didn't know, because I do know that if it's just that if they've been that use the whole time, technically, I think that's what the zoning is. It has to be continuous use, which it is. It's just non-compliant use.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, but that's my question.
Great question. You remember this came up with, and I recall sharing this with the council because we have a situation where there was new construction on West Street and they registered as an STR, but did not go through the special use permit process. And I reviewed this with Ross, and I had my interpretation, which we talked about, I think, with the planning commission.
Yeah.
And my interpretation, and Ross concurred, is that just because you register under the village ordinance does not mean that you've demonstrated use, consistent use of the property. And despite having an STR registration under the village ordinance, those properties still have to comply with the zoning ordinance. And so that new house over on West Street, if it's going to be an STR, it's going to have to go through the special use permit process. And in fact, they're working on that now. They're two separate ordinances: village ordinance, zoning ordinance. Use and whether or not somebody is able to legally change the use to an STR is going to be regulated by the zoning ordinance. Does not need to be included in the village ordinance for that purpose specifically. But regulating use is so tricky. You hear me say that all the time because it's just really hard to tell what goes on behind people's doors. And there isn't really for someone to demonstrate use as an STR, even though they haven't registered. And so I don't see that there's a simple way to try and enforce the zoning ordinance with the village STR ordinance. And it's really just a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Because there are instances where someone would be able to show proof of their use as an STR. And that would be sufficient for demonstrating use under the zoning ordinance, even though they may also at the same time be violating the village ordinance.
And that's why I wanted to know, because I wish there was a way, but I understand if
Yeah.
there's not. I just wanted to be sure there isn't something that we could include that would help us with that, because I do think that if you haven't registered and you've been non-compliant using that use for over a year, I feel like you should have to do something more than, I mean, because really ideally it would be great.
Well,
If we had,
that's where you could adjust the violation and the penalty within the village ordinance. You could make that.
So on the fee schedule.
Actually, it's worth considering within the ordinance language. If someone fails to register, they such and such. Here's the consequence. That you can adjust the way that you enforce a violation within the ordinance. This is kind of a standard violation clause, right? Where it says you're subject to a fine, additional violations after a certain period of time or per day. You'll see that.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean,
That's a
so
standard.
it could be that we still have the violation that we have currently outlined, but then there could be additional violation, like this is the violation if it's gone, if they haven't violated and it's been a year, because you have the whole year to register. Right now, it doesn't say when you didn't change that, did you?
No.
Okay, so it doesn't say when, so you could file on December 31st and it still counts for that whole year. So as soon as it's January 1st, that's day one of violation, correct? So then if it goes that entire year and you're still operating and you still haven't done it, and then it gets back to the end of the year again and you still haven't, to me, that second January 1st is when I think there should be an additional change. To me, because to me, a whole entire year, you've had a whole entire year, you've had a lot of grace period. So, now there's a bigger consequence.
Okay. I mean,
to me, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just to me, but if that was my intent, is that if it's been a year that you've not done it and you still are operating and you're just like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's just a village, if that's your attitude, then I think that that's when it should be something more, which if all we can do is a bigger fine, then to me, maybe that's what we do, because
you can.
So are we talking about people who haven't registered and are still operating as a
Yes.
STR? But they're being charged, if they haven't registered, they're being charged $200 a day.
if there was a way to do it rather than it's like it in the year, if it was like, you registered on May 25th of 2025. It's like a cyclical year, like, so you have to re-register by May 25th of 2026, and every day after that, the violations start. That's more work, to monitor when.
You can do it that way.
But I'm sure-
The way that I look at it is to just make it a little
Like it's an
a little
annual,
simpler, so that if you haven't registered and you're an operating STR and January 1 rolls around next year, the enforcement starts.
Mhm.
And I would look for that, not on December 31st, but like October, notifying people, you haven't registered. For those who haven't registered and we know that they're operating or likely operating, we notify them, so they have plenty of notice. And then if they haven't registered, the enforcement starts January 1. I mean, that's how it works within the current language, and I felt that's likely sufficient.
Yeah,
But there are other ways to certainly structure that could be stricter.
yeah, to me, I just don't know what the other ways would be. Like, to me, what I would love, which obviously you're saying we can't do, is that they have to come back to planning and they have to do the special use, which the reason is because when they do that, they have to come in person, face to face, and it's not necessarily that we're saying them because everything they're presenting to us is compliant, or they wouldn't say that that's what they're doing because they want to get approved. But I just feel like it makes a big difference. We've done some now, they've gone well, people are able to have conversation and see their faces. Like, I just think that it changes the seriousness of registering. And so to me, that's the reason, is that if you've been doing it and just ignoring that process, and you've been grandfathered through because you were doing it before we started to, put that ordinance into the zoning ordinance into place, then you just lucked out and you don't have to do it now ever. And if you're doing it continuously and following what you're supposed to be doing, that's fine. But I just would love if there was a way to make it so that they had to physically come and talk to people instead of just being able to. Anyway, so to me, I don't know if money is the right answer. I just would like to be that there is something that's like, man, I really should get it in there because I don't want to have to go do that. I don't want to have to fill out all the paperwork and go to the meetings and things like that. Anyway, so I don't know if there's a way to do anything even remotely close to that.
Well, I mean, it's about enforcing the zoning ordinance. And I feel like I've been pretty strict about.
Yes.
Like when I've had the instances that have come up where someone has not gone through the special use permit, and it's come to my attention that they're operating as an STR or they're registered as an STR, like with the West Street property, I told them, you gotta get the special use permit, or there'll be a zoning ordinance violation. So to me, that's the best that we can do with that circumstance.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's much else at this point with that, and use is tricky because, it's can be very difficult to prove when the use began and ended.
What I'm hearing from you though is that many people that have been in violation have been fairly compliant with registering when you've notified them.
Yeah.
There was one instance, I think, where there was a little bit of time lapse, but I think in the last year, most people that got the letters took necessary steps.
Yeah. There were only 9 that towards the end of the year that I had to sort of track them down.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody responded pretty well. There were a couple that kind of lingered, but all of the ones that were outstanding registered by the end of the season, except for the one that still has to get a special.
Well, that could change too if we had a fee, because I mean, right now all they have to do is fill out a piece of paper.
It's true.
So
that might delay or alter how people are registering. But most people tend to do it early in the year. I mean, I've already finished like 22 out of what I expect to be about 45.
Why don't we have a deadline that's earlier in the year?
Well, you could, but it's an arbitrary deadline.
That's what I said, maybe like on an annual basis, like, your permit's about to become,
and I mean,
come up for subscription.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about too, because if you think that that's a good policy to have as part of the ordinance, then that's something that we can add for sure. We can say by March 30, whatever the date is.
Since the upcoming season where they make the most money is coming up,
Sure.
I think they'd need to register before that starts.
Yeah,
I know some make money during the winter, but
yeah.
mostly it's
Mostly
season.
summer, yeah.
You say something?
But that's certainly a consideration, you know, if you think it's a good policy to have it in the ordinance, to have a different registration day. Especially given our season.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it should be in the spring.
April 30th or.
I think that it could help get them in faster if we do that.
Yeah.
Because right now, because it isn't there, it's like, oh, when do I have to do, I mean, like even
People
someone who's
suggest-
on the planning commission was like, wait, when is it due? You know, like, so
That's
I
right,
think,
most common question.
and they hadn't done it yet because they were like, oh, I didn't even know that when the deadline was, so.
The vast majority of the STRs have been operating for a while now, so you just. It's not as much of a concern for me because I expect 99% of the STRs from last year will be STRs this year. So in that sense, like, it doesn't matter that much whether they register in March or in November. Because we know which ones are gonna be operating, which ones aren't. And if they do start operating, they haven't registered, they haven't been through the SUP process. That's where the zoning ordinance enforcement comes in.
Do you think there's any reason not to add a date? A due date? Like, is there commons reasons that we should?
It makes it more difficult to administer. You know, to have the date, more work keeping track of when the applications are being submitted and notifying people and that kind of thing. I
Well,
don't.
I mean
but-
individual dates. I mean
She
like
meant-
one broad date,
Yeah,
obviously, so.
even. with
Because
the
right
broad
now it's
date,
basically December 31st, right?
Yeah,
And that's the
right.
date.
Yeah,
So there
exactly.
still is a date.
Yeah.
It's just at the end
Good
of the
point.
year.
Yeah.
So
I'm not opposed to it.
I'm just saying, like, I feel like maybe we could add it if there's no necessarily harm.
Sure.
I just want to be sure there
Makes no
isn't
sense to
harm
me
that
that
you
you-
guys can see because you're the ones having to do the work. Like,
It would just increase the amount that we're administering around the time of the registration, I think, you know.
instead of spreading it out.
Yeah.
Because right now people do it whenever they normally,
Well,
probably when they normally do it.
We're
When they're
trying-
here in town.
Yeah, yeah.
We're probably collecting 90% of the registrations, I'm guessing, like by the end of, towards the end of the year, we'll probably have 90% of them. So I'm only going after that 10%,
Yeah,
right? But I might have to go after a third of them or more if I'm
If we
doing it
move it up.
earlier in the year.
yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
Plus, there's this notification where you're sending out letters and all this kind of stuff, notifying people about the timing. It's not, I'm not saying that it's unworkable or that onerous, it's just an additional level of administering it.
It makes sense to me to charge the registration before the rentals begin, or largely before, rather than to charge the registration at the end of the year when all the rentals have come in. It just,
Let's add it then. If,
I mean, it would
That's
be in the
correct.
same tax year if it is at the end of the year, so that would be.
yeah, but just psychologically, you register first and then you bring in your business.
I know what you mean, it's
I
just,
feel like
it's a summer business.
look at it though, because if people are paying in December, it could be that they're like, oh, I'm paying for next year.
Well,
You know what I
maybe,
mean? So like,
but-
I feel like I don't.
Right? It's not important, I guess, in
I
this
mean,
place.
we could maybe add a date, but what if the date is, instead of being in March, what if it's in January sometime? Because if that's when, if you're doing December 31st is when you have to chase people. With making it, I don't know. I just feel like we could add a date. And then that gives people, instead of having, that's your number one question, it's, oh, this is the date. Even if we just write that it's December 31st. You know,
Mhm.
like. To clarify that that's what it means, like, of the current year. You must register by,
I think we spent a lot of time talking about.
you wanna talk about STRs, what are you talking about?
I actually, I don't know how I overlooked this, I did include a date.
Okay.
What did you say?
What's the day? Share the final decision.
I hadn't been looking through, I've been talking,
But
by April 30,
yeah, that's.
Good.
Where is it?
it's in section
I
3.
thought I read it.
Registration
I thought I
required.
read the whole thing, but apparently.
All registration forms. must
Oh, it
be
is,
updated
it's the
annually.
underline, I was so busy looking at the second word because of the thing that I didn't.
I'm like
notice.
arguing
Against
against
yourself.
Oh, wait, it's in there. So you picked a
I
date.
had
April 30th.
I had
That's what I
thought of
said.
that.
That's what I said.
I didn't talk through all.
I think it should be April 20th.
Okay.
And no one was there.
All right.
Well, perfect. Well, let's leave it then.
Yeah, let's leave it.
Problem solved.
Sorry.
All right, yeah, if anybody has anything they wanna, work with Jared on to, any other language, but I think if, now that we got the date clarified, it's, reads pretty good. And, so this will come to council at the next meeting for action, barring any other major adjustments in the language.
But at some point in the future, we can talk about the possibility of a cap.
It's up to you on how you'd like to.
I think that would be definitely a separate discussion.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah.
that we can have it. I mean, I have strong opinions and I don't want to
Yeah,
get into
maybe
it right now.
Maybe.
And I think that Will needs to be here.
Yeah.
He has his own, I mean, I know what it is.
Right.
I could tell you, he's told me many times, but I don't think that we should have the discussion without him here.
I agree.
So,
Okay, let's move on.
Okay. So that brings us to subdivision ordinance 66B repeal. Ordinance,
It sounds.
it looks like it's on typeset.
It sounds like a no-brainer.
Yeah. So this is something that we're gonna, it doesn't really, you said it doesn't really like fit the village's, makeup anymore. I mean,
no, well, it's an outdated land division
Yeah.
act that's being referenced in the subdivision control ordinance was written with that previous land division act from 1968 in mind. And the land division act has changed so much, it's made this ordinance mostly inapplicable. But then also when the village adopted ordinance 131, the land division ordinance, it superseded or replaced essentially what's in the subdivision control ordinance. However, there still are some conflicts. I think that it might have been the intent at the time to repeal the ordinance, but it just maybe didn't get done.
Yeah.
I
adopted
think
the
it's
land division.
yeah,
Yeah.
with that one. So I think it probably should have gone hand in hand with that ordinance 131.
okay, so.
Yeah, we definitely don't need it. I mean,
No.
it's complicating things, not making
Yeah.
things smoother.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll have a resolution at the next council meeting to repeal the 66B subdivision control ordinance.
Sounds good.
Okay. That brings us to our additional item E, which is PC membership number.
Yeah, so basically, I haven't talked to planning commission about this. It's something that has occurred to me since planning commission. So because we've had discussions here about village council and the ability to reduce to 5, which we aren't doing, but I then asked Jared, it occurred to me, is it possible to do that with the planning commission as well? And the reasons are somewhat similar. I really appreciate having multiple perspectives and all of the different voices, and 7 obviously gives you more of that. But we, in like my tenure, have seen multiple times now, multiple seats open, very challenging to find people to fill those seats. And then we operate then without people. It's been okay. Like, it's not like, oh my gosh, we couldn't get anything done. And I think that right now we, as far as I was aware, still don't have, no one has applied for Kathy's, and she notified us with a ton of warning. So there's been lots of time and message out there and people letting people know. And even some of the members that we have aren't able to come regularly at all. And so again, that's a seat that's sitting vacant. And I just wanted to see if council at all is interested, because my understanding from Jared is council would have to make that decision.
Yeah, by ordinance. There's a planning commission
Ordinance that we have that says
established
7 right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be 5, 7, or 9.
Yeah.
And I did try to look to see for ex officio members, and I don't think that we're gonna be violating if we went down to 5
I think.
by still having, that we would be violating, or we would be okay?
No, I think we'd be all right.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought too, because the trustee that serves is an ex officio member, and that can only be 1/3 of the commission. But that's, even at 5, one person is not going to mess that up.
The statute says ex officio cannot exceed 1/3 of the planning commission.
Correct.
So
Yes.
that's why I was So we would need to just verify that.
Yeah,
I think you may be the ex officio.
I think that I am. I read every single thing that I could find this morning to try and be sure because I knew I wanted to add it. But
Yeah.
like, and I can't, not any of the planning and enabling acts say that anybody else would be counted that way. And like our bylaws don't say that at this time, so for planning. So, and I don't know what people's thoughts are, but
Well,
they-
what do you, I mean, you've been sat on the planning commission longer than,
and I can ask the
does.
planning commissioners too. I mean, obviously I haven't talked to them. I just know that it has been a real challenge for us to find the people to fill the seats.
And
Like
my
it's not the
consensus is
easiest
that,
thing.
is that you don't split, you work toward consensus.
Yeah, we're almost, I mean, I don't know that we ever even have split decisions. I can't remember really any. I mean, it's pretty much always, because that's what we work. I mean, and if we can't come to a consensus, we usually then talk about it next time.
I would
So-
say that recruitment for planning commission has definitely been difficult. We served 6 members for a long time.
Yep.
Kathy is stepping down. I don't know when his term is up, but I know that John Loomer, just in conversations, I don't know that he would look to be reappointed, so.
Because I think,
It's
would it work the same way? It would phase out when people's terms are up, is what I assumed.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's different ways that you could
Do it.
go about that, but that would be my suggestion, is to phase out.
Yeah, it's not like somebody would be kicked off.
No.
It would be that, yeah, it would be that when people's terms are up,
Yeah,
it would change, with the exception of the trustee, because the trustee spot, there still needs to be that liaison, right?
Mhm.
it's an ex officio appointment.
Right, so that one would still stay, because my term expires in November. And then whoever is in my seat or me or whoever it is has that going forward, so that one wouldn't be it, but like Kathy's right now,
Right,
if we did something, I think
Yeah,
could
if we
in
were,
theory be
if
phased
we were to
out.
amend the ordinance, it would be something that would need to be reappointed in April.
In
which is-
fact, yeah,
that's right.
I could go with that.
okay. I mean, and I also, the other thing I do wanna say is that if we did that and we were like, oh my gosh, we can't make any decisions now, we're like flopping fish out of water. We could change it back, right? Like we could always, the council could say, oh my gosh, no, you really did need 7 people, we better scrounge and try and find somebody.
Yeah,
But I think, to me also, like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, when we scrounge and try to find somebody, it is actually a lot of work to be on the planning commission. Fair amount of reading and research and knowledge and a lot of discussion and all of these things. And so I feel like in general, the general public doesn't really know what a planning commission does, which doesn't mean that they can't serve. We definitely want people from all groups of life on the commission so that it's easily, accurately representing the community. But I think when you get somebody that really doesn't know what they're getting into, that also lends itself to issues, right? Which we have run into that too.
Yeah.
So like, I think that like, it's hurting us. And then that turnover, like the reason the master plan has taken the time it has is because we've changed chairs 3 times in the past 2 years. And we've, and commissioners have come and gone, and like, it just really disrupts the progress you're making, because then when somebody new comes on, they review everything you're doing, and it's really big things. So then there's those new opinions, which aren't bad, but then you have to almost start over, and so then you're like redoing stuff that it just makes it harder.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is there's an educational aspect to it. You can educate yourself about what being on the planning commission is, but once you get on it, you have to educate yourself about a lot of stuff in the village.
Yeah.
And zoning is so.
Which you guys
minute.
know.
I mean, so it's definitely, there's definitely a lot of work, I think, that goes into being a planning commission member that sometimes goes, I don't wanna say unappreciated, but unrecognized. It's like, you think you're just gonna be on it, it's like, oh, there's hours of reading involved,
And like, I've had other commissioners tell me that have left, right? Like, like, man, okay, this was so much more than I had any idea when you guys told me I should sign up, So I just think that if it makes it easier on us, and again, if it doesn't, if we discover it isn't helpful, and that it's a hindrance, we could change it back,
When's your next meeting?
next week.
So you guys will discuss this
Uh-huh.
amongst yourselves. 'Cause we've run
We
through-
totally could, I mean, that could get put on the agenda, right? And then we could discuss it at the next village council. It's like the whole reason we moved the meeting to be in between.
You could, I mean, we can schedule the first reading of an ordinance amendment, all right, well, adoption, you don't need to with that, for the next regular meeting here, you could, if it sounds like there's support, I can draft that up and have that ready for action, subject to the discussion.
Yeah, unless everybody on planning is like, oh my gosh,
Right.
but yeah. So, but I mean, this next planning meeting, just as an example, there's several members, I think at least 3 aren't gonna be there.
I'm not sure.
Because I think John, Kathy, and Mike all said they weren't gonna be there because of different vacations and things. Didn't they? I'm pretty sure they all
Yeah,
did.
no, I think you're
Yeah,
right.
and Kathy's is a vacation.
That
I'm
means
pretty sure
that
it's
every
health
other
stuff.
remaining person has to be there for.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah, but that's what reducing helps, because then the
does.
quorum is 3, right? Like, instead of 4, which doesn't seem like that big a deal, but it is when people are going away for winter vacations and all the different things. And you're trying to get stuff done, so that it's ready by the summer for when everybody's back. So, okay, thank you.
I think it's a valid discussion and something worth looking at.
Well, even if we have to put it off for another month, then get everybody together and talk about it.
Right, yeah.
Not that we could do.
Okay. All right, and that brings us to item number 6, which is our second public comment. If anybody, any members of the public on Zoom would like to make a comment, you can raise your hand and I can call on you. I can only see a few of you, or unmute and identify yourselves. And looks like Joanne is unmuted.
Yes, hi. So
Just name and address for the record.
Joanne Swanson, 10554 North Shore Drive. And I guess I would sum up my comment in one word, and that is transparency. Because you spent over an hour discussing drawings that the public has had no time to review. They weren't in the Dropbox as far as I could tell when I looked in there yesterday. So they're put in the Dropbox sometime between yesterday and today, and you spend over an hour discussing them. And some of you are already formulating what your favored drawings are, and you're also formulating a plan to go forward. But just a few meetings ago, when you made the decision to pay $6,000 for the development of these plans, you assured us that this did not mean that you were going to be developing housing on 7th Street. And in fact, at the last meeting, when you passed a resolution to, I guess, allow for development, and members of the public questioned, well, what does this mean? Most of you said that it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't mean we're going to go forward. It doesn't mean, that the decision to develop has been made. This isn't a good look. I mean, you're doing things, then you're saying, no, I'm not really doing these things. So I also question why you are moving forward before you have investigated whether you have the authority to even develop this property, because you are ignoring potential questions that have been raised regarding the manner in which the reverter clause was removed from this property. And I have seen no interest from this council to determine, other than Mr. Dean, to determine whether or not the reverter clause was properly removed, although I know Laura has expressed concerns about it. But don't you think you should find out if that was proper before you take these additional steps that you are now taking? 16 units? I mean, you're considering a plan with 16 units on 1.2 acres of land and talking about still trying to maintain the character of the neighborhood? And what about Thunder Court? You're talking about potentially not ruling out for-profit developers. What about Thunder Court, or whatever it's called? It's sitting there, and that was a developer. And I think the council gave concessions to that developer. So I just, I'm really concerned about transparency. And I really have no other comments now because I haven't had a chance to review the designs, but I probably will at the next meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Vicky, looks like she's unmuted.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Vicky Slot, 10160 North Shore Drive. So my head is swirling with a lot of thoughts and I want to communicate the most important ones to you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I guess I think the initial, the first thing that hit me, of course, was the density increase. And I'm of course, commenting on 7th Street. And you've gotten a lot of my letters regarding that I favor protecting the environment. Even a lot of people, it keeps birds out of the area. There's lots of research about that. And protecting the small town character and beauty of Northport, which I know is the conflicting goal in the public planning of this. But the density that was originally presented to us was 3 to 6. We sort of imagined this small court. And then what the first glance at the drawings was sort of like, what? It's overwhelming to me at this point. So you spoke to, Jared, the need to be in keeping with the character of the community. Now, the community has a lot of diverse types of housing. 7th Street, though, has large lots mostly. They're older homes. They're nice older homes. And of course, North Shore has some of your most expensive houses in, I would say, the village along North and South Shore Drive. So you need to balance the needs of people. These things, I do speak to people who've really invested a lot of money, and I'm not speaking with me so much, but I think that their property values need to be considered between Thunder Court and a potential, I don't know where you're going to land on this. It's sat between trails and 16 units, some of them very small, the ADUs. I just don't see that. I don't see that as in keeping with that area. I also, on the drafts, didn't notice anything about whether you were looking at the tree cover and trying to preserve some of that. That's a smaller item. Of course, my big overarching thing about the looking at the forest, I don't believe the government has a role in this, in housing. And I've sent you letters about that. I think that when we talk about that property value and the appraisal, which I'd still like to see, the first plan was what, 5 lots, 50 by 100. We're talking a value of $800,000 there. Put it on the market, see what you'd get. Now we're going to donate this land, and I know the members believe that this is a benefit to our entire community. I really question that. Are we really going to keep the school enrollment? That's what I've heard. Are we really going to improve business climate? I think that's a stretch. We're a very unique lakeshore community, and it's expensive to live in Northport. I'm shocked. I'm shocked at the sewer bills. I've had a well and septic back in Grand Rapids. It's just not cheap to live here. And when you give tax benefits, and we say nonprofits, those are profitable organizations. People make money, they own land, and we provide these houses, which are desperately needed. Nobody disagrees with that, to a small number of people. I get why you want to go big. I don't think it's in keeping with the 7th Street area, and certainly not the impact on the natural environment. And you know how much I love to walk and bike that, along with tons of other people. So traffic is a concern as well. I don't still know what our public directive is on this. I know that government in the country does feel they have a role on this, especially with cities that are rotting out in the middle, that they try to reestablish through these tax incentives. But I've heard the survey taken. I read the survey that was taken. The survey didn't have a good demographic. It didn't have an analysis, and it had a broad-ended question. Would you like to see affordable housing? Everybody in the world is going to answer yes. If you say, would you like to see, and I ask people I talk to, do you know that we might give away this piece of property on 7th Street for housing? And they go, no. and they're not in favor of. So I don't know. Do we really know that the general public in Northport is all in favor of a project like this? So those are my concerns. I do appreciate all the work you do. I want people to be able to live in Northport too. I do. I'm not some exclusive person who, and it doesn't have anything to do with people living by my house. It's the location of 7th Street and in keeping with that neighborhood, which is diverse, but I just don't see, some of the plans just were way out there, in my opinion. So I don't know if I hit my 5 minutes, but kind of seems like it.
Pretty close.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Vicki. Anyone else for a public comment? You don't see anybody unmuting? Okay, if there's no other public comments, it's not on the agenda, but any council comment before we adjourn? Laura?
I just, a couple things I want to say. I just wanted to clarify that the plans weren't in the Dropbox. We didn't have them either. Like Jared didn't have them, no one had them. They were put in the Dropbox as soon as he received them, and like that's how I read them, is that I thought they weren't going to be there ahead of time. This morning they were not there. And then they were there, and like, so therefore I looked at them so that I would not be seeing everything just because I had that time available to me. I just wanted to comment on that. I also personally want to say that first of all, when we did look at the reverter along at planning, Ross did give an opinion on it, that it was done, that was usable and that the property was usable. Since then, and since previous meetings and Edwin bringing it up again, I did research more again a couple meetings ago. And my understanding from that was that, again, everything that I could find was that this was still legal and going to stand. And I'm obviously not an attorney, but I took the documents that we did have, read more about it. And if the attorney already is saying that it's okay, and everything that I can find seems to say that that process was followed and therefore the land is usable, I guess more research could be done, but I feel that it has been. And then one final thing I wanted to touch on, and that is that I do think that we have a role in helping with housing, both through just our master plan, because it says that we are to work to, improve and add workforce housing and encourage that growth and things like that. But also just in 2024, there was a Public Act 153 that's pertaining to planning commissions that very specifically said that we were supposed to now also be looking and projecting 20 years or more into the future, and including an assessment of existing and forecasted housing demands with strategies to address them. And the private sector is how we have gotten to this point. Like, it's not gotten us there. So to me, we are fulfilling that role of trying to see, because we need to do something. There is definitely a problem. So I just those were based on the feedback, I just wanted to get that out there. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to add something. I don't know which point I should start with. I guess let's start with the part of 7th Street. So I've spoken to 2 lawyers about the issue. I sent them a lot of information, and to be honest, it's a very confusing issue. There's a few semantic questions that go into some of the state laws regarding parks and whether a referendum needs to be done. They were not paid, of course, and they just suggested there are a few points that are contentious and that we should review this with our village lawyer to make sure, because otherwise there would be issues with a titling company in regards to this property. The other part is, I think, sort of outlining the timeline for 7th Street and what we're deciding to do. Right now we're sort of looking at renderings, coming up with an idea. We want to get a full picture, and then I believe, as we spoke a couple meetings ago, and Laura brought this up, we'll make an official decision together once we kind of have a better idea of what exactly is going on. Speaking to the lawyer, making sure it's completely legal, working and seeing that we have a builder that can do it at the price point that we wanted at with the stipulations, and then just taking a full view of everything. Once we have the information, not, making a choice without all the data, so.
Well, and for me, part of it is that we have had our attorney look at it. I mean, it's just he looked at it before, but I mean, nothing in terms of the reverter aspect of it has changed that I'm aware of. So anyway, sorry.
And let's remind the public the date and location of the housing summit that we're having.
April 28th.
At the school.
April 28th at the school,
Yep,
And I-
5:30 is the start time right now.
5:30, and at that meeting, we should have renderings, 3D renderings. And we'll talk about everything, talk
Yeah.
openly
We also-
about everything.
Yep, and we also, the township will be there, new community
And
vision will be there.
no votes are going to happen before then. No votes on, going forward.
That's to
Well-
be determined. I mean, you could,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
but
think one of the things that's come across for me with the council and the way that you're going about this right now is that you're not rushing on taking action. This is a discussion. This is a work session meeting for this purpose, to have the discussion. I mean, I find that to be quite transparent. And you didn't get done with this discussion and say, we're doing this. You said, let's give it some time and talk about it and study it more, and we'll come back and revisit it to be determined. So I think that's a right way to be deliberative about the process.
Well, and people can definitely bring, once you have had more time to review, come to next meeting or send feedback or reach out to us in between. Once you have had more time to look at it now that it's been presented.
I just wanted to add, when I spoke with the lawyer, the law that the point he said that was the strongest was in regards to Michigan state constitution. From even though we removed the reverter from the DNR, which is the state, just by virtue of it being a park for so long, it would still be deemed a park, and that was the question of contention. Again, I don't
It wasn't
know.
a park though. It wasn't notated as parkland. It wasn't designated parkland. It just had a clause that it could only be used for recreation, but it was never designated parkland. It's actually R2 for its zoning. So that's part of the issue, and that's why I really wanted it to get designated because it needs the actual official designation for it to count.
Which is what you did in
Right,
November.
for the back.
To say,
Yes.
Per Village Law General Act, we're calling that park.
Yeah.
It was
I-
just the deed restriction that was.
Yeah,
that-
no, I'm not disagreeing that it's like.
No, I understand
possibly
what you're
not an
saying
issue. I'm
too, I just
confident, like
wanted-
legally, with 100%, like we did our due diligence, to the public, we've done our due diligence, we know for a fact we're doing this properly. And that's, I don't have a opinion on the matter, I don't.
We could have our new legal counsel give it the once over again if we want to. I know, Joe, I see you unmuted. Did you want anything to say?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments, but we're over time. I'll reach out to Jared and give him some perspective. And I did a little research on the STR fees, and I have some views on 7th Street. But we're over time already, so I'll connect with Jared. Thank you, Chris.
No time limit. What are you talking about? Yeah, my only comment would be, I hope that people with housing concerns or interest will attend our April meeting. We've had two. One was highly attended when there was Buster Dame controversy about what was going to happen to a parcel. The other one was sparsely attended. So my initial feedback from the two meetings we've had is that unless there's really something that gets the public interested, there are many members of the public that are fairly indifferent to the housing situation or the crisis we're facing. So I do encourage people to attend the housing summit we're going to have, where the township, the village, and NCV are going to be, highlighting things we've done in the past year and things that we're currently working on. And it's a public forum, so everybody should be able to attend. And hopefully there will be a question and answer period where we can, have a little back and forth. And any other comments? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn at 4:09 p.m.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned.